Introduction. There comes a time in every person's life when they try to make a change, and for some reason or another, that change is not successful. This can be profoundly discouraging and even send us on a downward spiral. We are not prepared for the setbacks in childhood. We are generally given the impression that in order to have value, we have to do things right, and oftentimes we think we have to do things right the first time. What we don't always take into consideration is the fact that a very common and unfortunate part of being human is failing. Whether we think we have everything figured out or not, the unforeseen obstacles that seem to insert themselves in our paths can sometimes take us by surprise. Sometimes the setbacks that we face seem insurmountable. We might begin to believe that we failed for a reason and that there is no possible way that we could ever be the people that we want to be. We stop having confidence in ourselves and begin to believe in the worst-case scenario a lot more readily than we believe in the possibility of success. This can be dangerous for many reasons. And over the course of time, if we continue to feed ourselves the belief that we will never overcome our challenges, and we're on a fast track to failure at all times, it can slowly begin to disintegrate our sense of self-worth. When we do not believe in ourselves, that can make it nearly impossible to function productively in our lives, especially when that means that we stop believing that we are even capable of productivity in the first place. Fortunately, there is a way for us to stop feeling sorry for ourselves and to reclaim that lost motivation. It can be extremely difficult to get back on our feet after it seems like everything we were working for has been lost. But the only true variety of failure comes from not actually trying in the first place. If you give up for good, only then will you really have something to worry about. Humans are extremely hardy. We can bounce back from even the most difficult situations. If you feel like you have experienced a major difficulty and you are having a hard time getting your footing, this book will prove to be a valuable guide. It will help you to remember that you are made of strong materials emotionally and mentally, and in that way, you will be able to succeed. It is possible for all of us to rise from the ashes, no matter how difficult the situations we find ourselves in may seem at the time. Sure, it is defeating to face failure, but the truth of the matter is that we can always learn to see negative situations in a positive light. Without that sort of flexibility, it can be difficult for us to achieve things in life that we want to achieve, and it can make it especially hard for us to move on when we find that we are not making the progress that we think we should make. Whether you're suffering from an emotional or material setbacks, it is possible for you to get back on your feet and thrive. This book will show you how. All you have to do is believe in yourself and remember that it is truly possible. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Processing and accepting your challenge. This may seem simple, but the first step to overcoming your failure and rising from the ashes is to accept the fact that you were not able to achieve the goal in the matter that you were hoping. Whatever it is that you did not succeed at, that is in the past. It does no good to overfixate on your failures, especially when they're related to feelings of inadequacy and desolation. Those feelings can be very consuming, especially when you were very invested in the project. That didn't work out. Acceptance can be a very difficult thing to master, especially if you are in the habit of being very hard on yourself. Unfortunately, most of us are, and this can prove to be detrimental to our emotional and sometimes mental health. That is why it is so important to come to terms with the event that is getting you down in the first place. Whether this is a failed project or the result of a difficult phase of life, it is time to examine what happened to you and try to find an objective point of view about it. Do not make the mistake of believing that your failure defines you. On the contrary, the only thing that defines you is the way you handle yourself in the face of adversity. That is when we find out what we are really made of. Unfortunately, many of us are programmed from an early age to believe that if something is hard or doesn't come easy to us, or if we fail at something, then we are just not good at it. Perseverance is something that is usually not taught in most schools or households, except by example. And those examples can be sadly rare. Do not blame yourself for feeling crushed under the weight of your challenge. This is a natural reaction to have. It is far worse to punish yourself for failing and put yourself through the ringer for being affected by that failure. Instead of punishing yourself, allow yourself to feel the things that you are not fully letting yourself feel. Try to understand that grief is a common feeling when you have lost something, and don't be afraid or feel silly for expressing those feelings. Consider the event that has discouraged you from all angles. Try to journal about the way it has made you feel. If you need to, you could even consider speaking to a qualified professional who can help you to sort out the difficult feelings related to this event. This can be especially helpful if you have experienced some variety of trauma. Sometimes traumatic events can make it that much more difficult to succeed, so working through them can be a great way to equip yourself with the tools and fortitude that can sometimes need to be developed in order to succeed. Once you have been able to make peace with your failure and have stopped blaming yourself and feeling resentful and embarrassed about it, instead beginning to see the event as objectively as possible, you will begin to create the mental mind space you need to move forward, instead of wasting time and energy being stressed out about your past failures. You will be able to learn from them instead and begin to grow and prepare yourself for a life of success. Chapter 2. Understanding what is holding you back and facing your fears. Now that you have begun to accept the way your challenge is not actually a death sentence, and actually something you are able to look at with more objectivity, it is time to look back on this journey objectively and begin to understand what it was that was the most challenging for you. When you are able to truly dissect what the hardest part of the situation you were and happen to be, then you will be able to further steel yourself against failure in the future. The first step in doing this is to be willing to answer hard questions. Ask yourself about what part of the process was the most difficult for you to deal with. Why? How did you feel when dealing with these setbacks? How long have you been battling with these feelings? Have you done anything to address these thoughts and feelings, or have you been dealing with them in silence? Journal about your answers, because sometimes we are able to learn much more about ourselves and go in depth about these things in writing. It can be very revealing because we become introspective and thoughtful about the question at hand. To truly understand why we act the way we do, it can be helpful to identify patterns of behavior that we can then address. And journaling is a good way to do that. It is a great way to begin to really consider what it is that holds us back. The second step is in learning to face your fears. Instead of being intimidated by the things that you are worried about, remember that you are not the first one to deal with these kinds of challenges and setbacks. Each of us has quite a tally of setbacks under our belts, and you might just be able to find somebody out there, or even a whole group of people who can offer their support and advice. It can help to look online for communities of people who have experienced similar challenges as you have. There are bound to be many others who have dealt with the same issues you are, even if they're a little bit different. If you speak with others who have been in the same boat as you have, it can be very encouraging. They may be able to offer advice and strategies to cope with the kinds of things you're dealing with. And it is inspirational to see people who have dealt with the same setbacks find their footing again. If you have begun to believe you are not capable of succeeding, or you're simply feeling afraid to take the next step, speaking with someone who has been through what you're going through and survived it can really give you the added encouragement you need in order to launch yourself over your mental block and begin to make real progress. It is unbelievably important to make sure that you are not being too hard on yourself. Sure, you may be in a hard place, but that doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with you. In fact, believing that your failure is an indication about your worth is the fastest way to make yourself needlessly miserable. Instead of staying stuck in your head and believing that it is because you don't know how to do anything right that you found yourself challenged, instead begin to see that most of the reasons you are feeling bad about yourself have to do with your fears of failure. But failure doesn't define you. In fact, it can be a great way to grow and learn. To begin with, start to consider the things that you are afraid of. Now that you've experienced your challenge and may have already experienced the worst case scenario head-on, you are likely to have encountered many hidden fears. Instead of letting those ears oppress you, bring them to light by identifying them. Again, a journal can come in handy in this situation. In a journal, try to list the fears that your challenge has brought to light. It will be a relief to be able to identify them. And once you have identified them, then it is much easier to address and overcome them. You can even designate a specific journal toward expressing your fears and writing when you feel as if you are overwhelmed by a scary situation. That way you will begin to realize that you actually do have power, even when you don't feel like you do. Some fears may even be irrational fears that have developed because of anxiety. Realistic fears can be managed and prepared for, while irrational fears can be seen for what they are. The fears you write about will become less imposing in your mind as you allow yourself to process them and face them. Once you sense a fear, whether irrational or rational, creeping up in your mind, you can journal about it or counter it with a mantra. 4. Irrational fears. You might want to say something to yourself like, "This fear is irrational, and I am going to be okay," while rational fears can be met with a mantra, such as, "Whether this situation happens or not, I can prepare for it and be stronger for it." Peace of mind is the greatest gift you could give yourself. Chapter 3. Accepting adversity as a normal part of life. Something that most of us tend to forget as we go through life is that we are never going to get things perfectly the first time. When we do, it is either a fluke or simply a gift. For the most part, we are stuck having to learn, and the learning process takes time, and sometimes, more than others, that time can feel like an eternity, especially when we put the pressure on ourselves of thinking that in order to have value, we have to make sure that we succeed at everything all the time. A lot of us don't learn that adversity is something we should come to expect. Rather than expecting it, we fear it and do everything in our power to avoid it at all costs. This can make it extremely challenging for us to learn how to solve problems and overcome obstacles, which may lead to an even greater difficulty in coping with setbacks. That is why it is important to change your mindset and begin to accept and even expect adversity. If we accept the fact that we are never going to be perfect, then this can be much easier to do. However, many of us experience demanding authority figures throughout our lives that lead us to believe that if we are not excelling, then we are less valuable. It is a dangerous trap that we find ourselves in, but all of us are able to overcome it if we know how and are willing and able to put our minds to it. The first thing you have to do is stop being so hard on yourself when you struggle. Struggling is a normal part of life. Everybody who is born struggle somehow. In fact, the second we are born, most of us began to cry because what we experienced was a struggle, but it was one that our mothers were able to face, and for our sakes, they overcame it the best that they could. And we were also along for the ride during an experience that was difficult for everybody involved. That should prove to be a lesson to us all. We are born struggling, and we are not going to stop struggling. In fact, we should change our attitude about struggling rather than trying to be perfect all the time. It creates unnecessary anxiety surrounding the process of learning and having to work hard to achieve the things that we want to achieve. 4. People who find it difficult to accept inadequacy, struggling can be that much more anxiety-inducing. People like this are often the most driven to succeed, which makes the challenge of rising to the occasion that much more difficult. However, it should be an accepted fact of life that nothing worthwhile comes easily. We should expect to be challenged and rise up to face those challenges without defining ourselves based on whether or not we succeed at a goal. It is how we respond to failure that truly defines us. If we don't have the mental toughness that we need in order to bounce back after meeting an unexpected challenge, then we may find ourselves shriveling at the first sign of resistance. It does not make you a weak person to have to take time and energy to achieve your goals. And it does not make you a weak or worthless person to have goals that were difficult or impossible to reach. Sometimes you may achieve your goals through many years of hard work and labor and countless challenges. Other times, sometimes a goal is not meant to be reached, and that is that. You have to learn how to define your own definition of success and try not to subscribe to society's interpretation of what you should be doing and how to define yourself as a success. By accepting that failure is a part of life and learning how to integrate it into your learning process, then you're going to stop putting so much pressure on yourself to succeed and linking your sense of self-worth with whether or not you are able to achieve your goals. Sure, goals are an important thing to have, but so is a strong sense of self and confidence. You should be confident enough to look a challenge in the eye and even a failure and accept the fact that you are where you are for a reason. Sometimes that reason is to help you learn something, and other times that reason is so that you can achieve the goal and move forward from there. No matter which direction your life may take in, your time is not wasted unless you begin to dwell on the things that could have been rather than focusing on a plan for your future. Make yourself a promise that rather than dreading failures and setbacks, you will begin to expect them. In fact, you should learn to embrace them because they will provide you with insight about your plans and your own biases that you would never get elsewhere. Once you are able to look at failure as something that is bound to happen at some point, you will stop taking it so personally when it does happen. The hardest part about failing is not expecting it half the time, while the second hardest part is trying to recover your losses. If you always have another plan ready and you're doing everything in your power to make your goal a reality, then you have nothing to feel sorry about. Sure, you might have some time and resources wasted, but that is nothing compared to the hours of agony you will be sparing yourself by understanding that failure is simply another part of life, and it is always better to count your blessings and move on. Chapter 4. Viewing mistakes and setbacks as learning opportunities. Now that we've begun to process the way that we have been affected by our challenges and setbacks, it is time to begin to redirect our minds so that we begin to understand just what it is that is holding us back. Not only that, but we will be able to fully view these setbacks as an opportunity rather than as a determining factor in the rest of our lives. When we make the mistake of overthinking the significance of failure in our lives, it can become extremely dangerous. We should never equate ourselves with our achievements. There are times we will do well and times we will not. There are plans that we will succeed at, and there are times we will not necessarily achieve our goals. Whether we are able to achieve the things we most value in the moment or not, our definition of success should not necessarily be perfection. None of us is perfect. That is not realistic. You will make things much harder on yourself and stress yourself out needlessly if you try to measure up to impossible standards. Instead, do everything in your power to shift your belief system so that you are able to redefine success as something that makes sense to you. It doesn't mean that conventional standards of success. You don't have to have a huge house or a beautiful condo or the family with a white picket fence. What you have to do is to find something that truly makes you feel fulfilled and a sense of value that you locate from within, not from without. It can be very dangerous to try to associate your sense of worth with outside material possessions or measurements of success that rely on other people's interpretation of you and your intentions. The last thing you want to do is to fall into the trap of believing that you are not the one who determines whether or not you should feel good about yourself. It is always a bad idea to put control over your self-worth into the hands of somebody else. Nobody wants to believe that they are worthless, but it is far more easy to believe that you are worthless if you are basing your sense of worth on the wrong things. Instead of defining your success based on these types of things, instead begin to realize that you're not unsuccessful at all. The only thing that makes anybody unsuccessful is when they give up on themselves and stop believing that they will ever be able to achieve the goals that mean the most to them. It can be very difficult for us to get over making a mistake. That is partly because we are programmed to believe that our sense of self-worth should be derived from doing well based on other people's standards. This type of conditioning begins right at school and follows us throughout our careers. We have to make sure that we are doing everything right before we are rewarded, and this begins to change the way we view ourselves. The thing about that is that everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has a difficult time adapting to other people's standards. And unfortunately, achieving goals can take a lot of work and may entail jumping through a lot of hoops that have to do with other people's standards and interpretations of success. This can be very draining emotionally and taxing, even physically. Your resources may end up feeling very limited, along with your ability to feel good about what you are doing. But instead of feeling like a failure because you have made mistakes, and these types of difficulties can be excessively hard to navigate, instead, try and view all of your mistakes as learning opportunities. Nobody is going to do every single thing perfectly the first time around. Life is all about learning and taking risks that you know you're not necessarily going to land on your feet with. And sometimes falling down can be the hardest part, but it can also be the most rewarding. Without mistakes, then it is almost impossible to move forward. You have to make them in order to navigate the difficult terrain ahead of you. And mistakes like this are never as bad as they feel. Of course, it cannot be helped that you feel badly about making mistakes. This is natural. However, it is always better to believe in yourself and do everything in your power to remember that no matter whether you fail or succeed, your goal is yours alone, and you have the power over whether or not you approach this with a level head and an objective attitude. Staying objective is a great way to view mistakes from a very proactive angle. When we do this, we are allowing ourselves to utilize all of the information that we receive from our mistakes. We see things about our strategy that don't work and things about our strategy that have worked. We see things that we could utilize further and apply to the achievements of other goals, and we see things that should be cut out from the process altogether. However, sometimes we are very blinded because we are personally invested in the success of our goals, and this can prove to be challenging. Of course, setbacks can hurt, but the best thing that you can do for yourself and for your goals in general is to learn how to be them from an objective standpoint. Only then will you be able to truly understand just how important it is to make mistakes along the way. No matter how big your mistakes feels, there is always a chance for redemption. It is never too late. Just keep trying to learn about yourself and your process along the way, and everything will turn out fine. Chapter 5. Changing your negative thinking patterns. We mentioned the last chapter that oftentimes we are the victims of bias in our own lives. When this is the case, sometimes we do not fully see ourselves the way we truly are, and we find that there are no faults in our thinking. This type of mentality can be very destructive because all of us make mistakes. All of us are human, and none of us have all the answers. That means that it can be very difficult for us to pinpoint when we have a negativity bias. We all have this. All humans tend to value negative information more highly than they value positive information. Interactions that leave you feeling horrible are often weighed and interpreted as more important than interactions that leave us feeling pretty good about ourselves. As horrible as this may be, it is just the way the human brain operates, and it can be extremely detrimental to our mental and emotional well-being. Fortunately, there are ways that we can begin to change our thinking patterns so that we're no longer stuck dwelling on negative thoughts and situations. Sometimes this can require a significant amount of counseling or therapy, but what is the most important here is that you do what you truly have to do in order to move on from your negative thinking patterns so that you can succeed in this life. The first thing you have to do to change your negative thinking pattern is to accept that you have one. If you are not able to identify the fact that you have a negative thinking pattern, then you will never be able to address it. Sit down and really think about what it is that makes you feel badly about yourself. Think about the things in your life that you could be viewing with a more optimistic lens. A lot of the most successful people in this world have sworn by positive affirmations and mantras simply because negativity can be so overwhelming and we can become easily discouraged when we are faced with a lot of negative information. This can be especially difficult for us when that negative information relates to us and what we identify as our successes or failures. We take these kinds of things personally, whether or not we know objectively that we shouldn't. And it's a hard too. We are spending so much of our time and energy working toward a specific goal, it can hurt us deeply when we realize that our struggles and our efforts seem to have amounted to nothing. Not only does that hurt us emotionally, but it hurts our pride. We do not want to believe that we have wasted all of this time and energy on something that will not become what we wanted it to. I saw important to address your negative thinking patterns. Everybody has a hard time maintaining a positive outlook sometimes, but you have to be able to train yourself to switch your mindset from negative to positive. This is where the mantras and positive affirmations can really come in handy. If you have a word or phrase that you can close your eyes and repeat to yourself when you start to feel overwhelmed by a certain type of situation, it can disrupt your negative thoughts and retrack your mind towards something more positive. This is exceptionally important because not only does it help you feel a little bit better, but it physically begins to rewire the neurons in your brain. The way we think becomes habitualized and cemented in our neural pathways. We begin to have unconscious impulses toward one reaction or another. This is why trauma can be so extremely damaging. When we're used to having negative sensory input all the time, we may begin to react negatively to things that don't necessarily warrant that type of reaction. We are out of control of our own synapses, and this can be very detrimental when you are attempting to achieve any goal whatsoever. Whether you have trauma or not, the fact remains that the brain begins to create familiar pathways in the brain that help us to understand how to process the information that we receive. If we begin to interpret our setbacks as opportunities rather than reasons to feel horrible about ourselves, then we are able to interrupt the neural pathways as they fire off down the line and reroute them into a more healthy approach to achieving our goals. This can be done for anything. If you're feeling overwhelmed by any situation, instead of dwelling in that emotional addiction that your neurons have created for you, then you should do everything in your power to distract yourself from those negative thinking patterns. Close your eyes and take a few breaths, and then think about one of your mantras. For example, if you're feeling overwhelmed because you feel as if you will never achieve anything of value in your life, take a deep breath and close your eyes and tell yourself, yes, I will achieve the things that I set out to achieve, even if it takes a lot of work. This will help you to retrain your brain to begin to accept adversity as a normal part of life and not something that will ultimately determine that you are not worth success. There's a reason that there's so many books out there about how powerful it can be when you change your mindset to become more positive. It can be so easy to become overwhelmed by the negative information surrounding us all. But when we are able to truly transcend these self-imposed limitations our minds, the success we can achieve is incredible. The best thing you could ever do for yourself is to begin to rewire your brain, to have a more positive outlook especially when it comes to achieving your goals. That way, you will be able to move forward in your life and truly begin to succeed. Chapter 6. Stop fearing the future. Every year, as we grow older, many of us begin to look at our birthdays with dread. The same can be true of the end of the year when everybody is celebrating a new beginning. A lot of us have a tendency to feel negatively about these hallmarks of our lives because we feel as though we are aging and we're losing something rather than gaining it. If we are willing and able to understand that the future isn't a bad thing, it can change everything. This can be very difficult, though, especially if you have experienced a lot of negative experiences in the past. You have become conditioned to believe that negativity is an unavoidable part of life, and that no matter how difficult things are now or have been in the past, it is possible for them to get worse. This can cause us to begin to suffer from extreme anxiety about the future, especially when it comes to achieving goals. If you have become comfortable identifying yourself as a failure, this can be especially true when you think you're only good for messing things up. Then of course you will have a hard time looking forward and believing that there will be anything of worth for you to find there. Sure, you may have a small light of optimism when you look ahead, knowing that one day you will definitely achieve something special, but when you stop and take a look at the rest of your life, sometimes what you may find is that you have not changed now from the time when you began to repeat this cycle. All of us want to have the hope that we will make things better and that we will truly achieve something special. And all of us have the potential to make those dreams a reality. However, we have to stop fearing the future and actually begin in the present to make plans that are changing us every day, little by little, so that we are truly able to succeed. A wise person once said that the definition of craziness is doing the same thing over and expecting different results. So if you are afraid to look to the future and to try and see the positive opportunities awaiting you there, consider what you have done in the past and the patterns that you have followed. What got in your way before? What was it that truly stops you from continuing onward and doing something special? A lot of the time, the only answer that is truly clear-cut and defined is ourselves. We get in our own way. We overwhelm ourselves with fear and negativity and become immobilized rather than energized to move forward. It can be so difficult to succeed when we are typical humans with typical emotional lives. Emotions can be such an overwhelming and inhibiting thing, and yet it is a necessary part of life for us to have. It is not a bad thing to feel. It is actually much worse to try to deny that you have feelings at all, because then they turn into unconscious difficulties and challenges that make success that much harder to accomplish. This is why it is so important for us to begin to process our emotional lives and take the time out of our day to meditate and think about the way that we have been affected by events throughout our day. We need to be able to be in total control of ourselves, emotionally and physically. Exercise can help here too. It can give you the confidence boost that you need to really believe that you are capable of accomplishing something special. You're able to make small, gradual changes that ultimately result in something powerful. When we are able to take these small steps toward empowering ourselves in our lives, it can be that much easier to stop fearing the future. We have to understand how much power we have in the here and now when we start to make progress toward accomplishing little goals that make us feel good about ourselves and make us truly understand that there is a payoff to hard work, even if it is difficult to see it at the time. Then we will have a much clearer image of what it is that we want our future to look like and how we're going to get ourselves there. It is important to have a relationship between yourself and your power. You do have the power to make great changes in your life, and you do have the power to change the way that the future is shaping up for you. If you understand this and allow it to really resonate in your mind, then you're going to have a great deal more confidence. Taking those small steps to improve your vision of the future is important. You need to Allow yourself to become excited for new opportunities that will arise. You need to stay on the alert and always looking for these things rather than letting them slip by you. The future is huge, and it is full of so many great opportunities. The variables to our destiny are limitless, but we have to be willing to take the first step toward achieving the goals that will get us there. Creating a vision board can be an extremely helpful way for you to begin to embrace the future. If you look at the things that you want to accomplish and the small ways that you can begin to achieve goals right this moment that will carry you forward in your future and help you to achieve whatever goal you have in mind, then you're going to have that much more of a chance at success. Don't let the future get you down. All of us are doing our best, and all of us have the opportunity to embrace our future and turn it into an opportunity rather than a burden. Begin taking the steps to do so today. You will be glad that you did. Chapter 7. Laying the groundwork for success by working on Plan A and Plan B. The one thing that most of us can agree on is that there are no guarantees in this life. Sometimes there are things that seem definite and yet they still manage to fall through. Somehow, this can be very jarring and discouraging, especially to somebody with a sensitive disposition to may not have a lot of self-confidence. Self-confidence can be a tricky thing to master, and even the most self-assured seeming people can struggle with self-doubt. However, overcoming self-doubt is something that can be done, although it may not abolish anxiety entirely. It can be possible for all of us to have confidence in our abilities. The more confident we have, more objective we will be when it comes to facing failure. In fact, successful people redefine failure. They don't consider failure to be something that is permanent. Rather, failure simply means that plan A didn't work, and now it is time to move on to Plan B. This can be tricky for a lot of people. They get very attached to their goals and their way of going about achieving them. Nobody likes the idea of wasting time or feeling as if they have done something wrong. Some people are more sensitive to this than others, and it has been suggested in several studies that children who are blindly encouraged for doing well at things that everybody does well at might take failure much harder than those who are instead encouraged to keep trying and continue their efforts in order to actually accomplish their goals. That isn't to say you shouldn't coddle and encourage your children, but there is evidence to show that when faced with challenges, people who are not encouraged to continue trying and keeping up the hard work have a much harder time in processing failure. People who understand that failure isn't permanent have a much higher rate of success. These people are able to consider their goals at all angles and think ahead. They are willing to see the potential challenges that may arise and the ways that they may fail before they even begin. They are willing to look at all of the negativity as a way to strategize around it and provide themselves with a foolproof plan toward getting what they hope to accomplish done. One important way that successful people succeed is by having many plans of action ready at the drop of a hat. They don't simply choose one path and take it and consider that the only way that they will ever achieve their goal. They remain flexible and adapt to many different types of challenges that face them along the way. They don't get discouraged because one particular route didn't work out. Instead, they try another and then another until they have fully determined that all of their options are no longer on the table and they have to move on to Plan B. Sometimes Plan B can be simple and a new way to approach the same problem. Other times, Plan B may be the admission that perhaps this particular goal or challenge may not be something that can be overcome. In that case, Plan B is a new plan or a new goal to focus energy on until maybe things change and Plan becomes an option again. New, successful people do not get stuck. They do not stay stagnant. They do not dwell. They are constantly rolling and moving with the tides and are unable to sit still long enough to feel sorry for themselves. They are able to process their emotions quickly and efficiently because they have a lot of confidence in themselves and a good emotional relationship with themselves as well. They do not stay stuck in the emotional carpet that so many of us can become subjected to. Once we are truly processing our emotions at this level of efficiency, then it will become easier for us to consider our options clearly. Instead of sitting down and believing that your first plan of action is the best and only possible plan of action to take, sit down and consider all kinds of different options. Never limit yourself to just one potential plan. That is one of the most dangerous things that you can do, especially when it comes to business. Any goal that you want to accomplish, you need to already assume that there are going to be setbacks and challenges for you to consider. There is never only one option. You always have to keep in mind that there are many different ways to get from point A to point B, and sometimes that includes resorting to plan B or C or D. There is nothing wrong with that. You are not a failure because plan A didn't work out the way you expected or hoped that it would. Rather, you are brave for attempting it in the first place, and smart to be prepared with other options should your first plan not work out. The fastest way to failure is to limit yourself by tricking yourself into thinking that you only have one option. There are many different paths to success. As long as you don't give up until there is absolutely no other option, you will get where you want to be. And if you have to change your plans or your definition of success, then so be it. You are in control of your destiny, and you can pick yourself up off the ground and rise above the ashes to thrive. Chapter 8. Surrounding yourself with moral support. Every once in a while, no matter how difficult things might seem, talking to someone else can give us a whole new perspective that helps us to get our minds around difficulties when things seem to be the worst. There are difficulties that plague us all, but more especially when we are driven to succeed and we have not allowed ourselves to build up a proper support network. A support network is important to have for many reasons. First of all, it provides us with a group of people who are genuinely invested in our success. They are there for us when we are feeling insecure and can oftentimes offer advice and counsel when things are starting to feel rough. Having another perspective to bounce your own point of view off could be a very good way to stay motivated and provide yourself with other people who can remind you that you are working towards something that is realistic and attainable. Another good reason to have a support network is to help you to hold yourself accountable to your success. When you are surrounding yourself with supportive people who ask you all the right questions and know that answering those questions will help you to keep track of your progress, then you're more motivated to keep on track and not slack off when it comes to achieving your goal. So how do you choose your support network? You begin by making sure you are not communicating with toxic people. Removing yourself from toxic influences is the fastest way to make sure that you are working in your own best interest. A lot of the time, we don't even realize just how stressful other people can be. Our environments are easily influenced by the people in them. So, as a rule of thumb, it is best to make sure that you are only surrounding yourself with people who want to be encouraging. How do you identify a toxic person? Toxic people tend to have an aura of negativity about them. Many of them complain a lot, while others might find fault in everything you do. Some toxic people like to hurt others on purpose to derive a sense of self-worth, and others may find it entertaining to poke holes in all your plans and tell you all the ways things are doomed to fail. If you can identify toxic behavior in anybody in your support circle, chances are high they are not there to be genuinely supportive. Do not hesitate to distance yourself from toxic people. It is the best thing you will ever do for yourself. Whether you are building a support network or not, you benefit greatly from removing toxic influences from your life. It can be very difficult, but it is always worthwhile. The greatest things in life are more easily accomplished with the support of people who truly want to encourage you and who find joy in your success, as opposed to seek satisfaction in your shortcomings. It can also be beneficial when it comes to your support network to choose people who are already successful in the ways that you would like to be successful as well. These types of people are often full of friendly advice and pointers and will know exactly what kinds of challenges that you're going to be facing. It can be extremely validating too. Speak with somebody who has gone through similar experiences and found themselves in the same place that you might be. It has been said that you start to take on the attributes of the people that you spend most of your time with. It is no secret that humans are pack animals, and we have a tendency to turn to social dynamics as a way of maintaining our health and well-being. Because of this, perhaps it makes us more impressionable. The best course of action here, then, is to spend the majority of your time with the types of people that you admire the most. Do not spend time with people whose attributes you dislike, because it is highly likely that those qualities could rub off on you, whether you want them to or not. Be selective about the people that you spend your time with. If you find yourself dealing with a lot of toxic people, do everything in your power to cut them out and limit the time you spend with them so that they are no longer able to influence you. That is one of the fastest and most foolproof ways of eliminating clutter in your mind and creating a support network of people who will truly encourage you, as opposed to people who will delight in the fact that they have been able to bring you down. Something else that you could attempt to do is find a mentor. Mentors are people who are there for guidance and support and will go out of their way to show you that you are doing a good job at working toward your goals. You feel stuck, know how to help you, or find resources when the going seems to be getting tough. Mentors help you stay on track and can be a great way to help you to refocus your efforts onto something productive rather than dwelling on things that may have been less successful than you hope it would be. Utilizing a mentor can be a great way to help you become more confident and capable of becoming your truest self and rising from the ashes. There is no faster way to failure than surrounding yourself with people who are going to simply hold you back. You do not want to spend your time dealing with people who don't believe in you or your visions, or who make you feel like you are worthless for not measuring up to their expectations and preferences. Instead, be strong and make good choices about who it is that you spend your time with. In the long run, that can help you far more than you would ever believe when you embark upon a journey to rise from the ashes and succeed. Chapter 9. Journaling with Gratitude. All of us have setbacks from time to time, and these can often change our perspective about ourselves and our ability to achieve goals. There are many ways for us to begin to deal with these feelings of inadequacy, but one of the best ways, especially if you are hoping to succeed more in the future, is by journaling. In particular, journaling about the things that you are grateful for is a good way to begin. To focus your mind on the positive things in your life rather than dwelling on the negatives. When we are able to shift our focus on tomorrow positive aspects of our lives, it becomes far easier for us to begin to view negative situations in a more objective light. Gratitude is a great way to start to appreciate the things around us. Not only that, but it can help us to begin to see opportunities that we may have overlooked at other times. Journaling about things that we have to be grateful for is highly beneficial. Not only does it help us to process our emotions, but it helps us to retrain our minds to appreciate things more and to seek out the things that make us happy rather than dwelling on the things that make us miserable. Journaling in itself is a very useful tool as well. It's a great way to start to keep track of the progress that we are making, whether emotionally, physically, or in terms of business and other ventures that we are interested in. It helps you to think about your thought patterns and the way you are potentially self-sabotaging or allowing yourself to dwell on things that do not necessarily need to be dwelled on. Another benefit of having a gratitude journal is that when you're feeling down and things are starting to look grim, you can reference your gratitude journal as a way of helping you to lift your spirits. Sometimes, when we are depressed or we are dealing with failure, it can be difficult for us to see the positive aspects of life. We need extra encouragement to try to look for them and allowing ourselves to journal about at least one thing that we are grateful for every day provides us with an opportunity to dig ourselves out of the darkness and see the light again. And if you aren't really having a hard Time finding something to be grateful for. You can always read back over your gratitude journal and consider all of the different things that you have to be grateful for. It can be very heartening to have this type of resource at your disposal, especially if you're hoping to achieve something great. We can forget all the little steps that it takes to accumulate into a larger whole. And if we're utilizing a gratitude journal to help us keep track of the things that we are doing right, then it will help us to keep our mind focused on the good. Keeping a gratitude journal is just one more way of utilizing the power of positivity in order to help you achieve all of your goals and rise up from the ashes. It is a useful tool in many ways, but most especially when it comes to being able to look at certain events objectively and retraining your mind to focus on opportunities in positivity rather than dwelling in the darkness of your perceived failures. Chapter 10. The importance of routine and structure. Perhaps the most important thing for anybody who is trying to turn their lives around is figuring out how to utilize routine and structure so that you are fully capable of spending time wisely and creating opportunities for yourself to succeed. Time management can be one of the most difficult aspects of getting yourself on the ball. This is especially true if you have been suffering from depression due to failures in the past. All of us have a tendency to waste time in one way or another. And sure, recreational time is important too. However, if all we are doing is spending time on recreational things and obligations that are not helping us to move forward toward our goals, then we can begin to fall into a slump. It can be hard to get out of something like this, which is why routines and structure can be so helpful. There is nothing more beneficial to somebody with depression and discipline. And whether you're suffering from depression or not, discipline is something that can be life-altering in the best of ways. When we are able to dedicate ourselves to a certain task at a certain time every day, and it becomes a healthy habit, not only does it help us to build confidence, it helps us to truly understand and appreciate the value of our time. When we understand how much we can accomplish in a certain amount of time, it becomes that much easier for us to become motivated to utilize our time in the best way possible. A lot of people feel confined by routine, but those who are able to utilize it in their own lives ultimately find that it is extremely rewarding and beneficial. When we are able to learn proper time management skills, having a routine set down is something that is not only better for our peace of mind, but it is also better for our physical and mental health as well. When we're not tending to those things, it could be that much more difficult for us to succeed. If you're not used to having a schedule, start small. Begin to try doing certain things at a certain time every day so that you begin to get used to setting the time aside for specific tasks. It is better not to overload yourself all at once. For example, begin to dedicate yourself to eating your meals at a certain time and perhaps going to sleep at a certain time as well. These will give you basic structure to work from, one that is immovable. Having a good sleeping and eating schedule is something that truly benefits the body and mind both. Now, once you have the basics down, then you can begin to prioritize your schedule. Consider all of the obligations that you have to deal with throughout the week and begin to allot a certain date and time for you to proceed with those activities. You may find that you have a lot of obligations, or you may find that you have a relatively clear schedule. Either way, organization of your calendar can be exceptionally helpful. Remember to try setting aside time every day for you to be able to utilize introspection, meditate, and do things that help you to stay in touch with your true self. These will help you to feel at your best at all times, which is ultimately the most important aspect of rising from the ashes. On top of that, creating a routine for yourself is a way to relieve stress and anxiety. You will have more opportunities to feel in control of your time and shift your focus to the things that truly matter the most to you when it comes to working toward your goals. When you're making your goals a priority in your day, so much easier to accomplish. Before long, you'll find yourself wondering how it was so hard for you to get into the right mindset to rise from the ashes and pull yourself up from your bootstraps to succeed. Conclusion. Over the course of a lifetime, all humans accumulate many different experiences. It can be hard for us to reconcile ourselves. A failure, especially if we are taught at a young age that failure is something that defines us. Most of us are accustomed to being measured by the standards of others, and this can leave us feeling extremely discouraged and unhappy, especially when we are unable to achieve our goals. Fortunately, where there is a will, there is a way, and we can easily begin to identify all of the ways that we are coming up short when it comes to working toward our goals. There are many ways that we sabotage ourselves that we don't even consider, and being able to look at those objectively in a way that is constructive will inevitably help you to get out of whatever slump you may be in so that you can truly begin to live up to your full potential. Following the simple steps in this guide to coming into your power and rising above the ashes like the phoenix, coming into its own will allow you to truly understand just how much influence you have over your own destiny. All of us have shortcomings and setbacks from time to time. However, we do not have to let those things defeat us. Instead of becoming discouraged, use this book as a way to remember that you are fully capable of becoming the best version of yourself possible, no matter what types of challenges you have faced in your life. Whether you need to seek out emotional and mental support or you need to be more diligent and disciplined, either way, you are bound to succeed if you are willing to take the steps necessary in order to do so. Start to redefine your life so that you are living for yourself and yourself alone. Nobody has the right to tell you how to live your life. You need to start playing by society's rules and begin to start accepting yourself for where you are at and what you hope to accomplish. Being able to really accept yourself will provide you with the confidence that you need to pursue your dreams. This book will show you how to do just that. No matter what types of adversity you may have encountered on your journey so far, there is still hope for you yet. All of us have a hard time doing what matters the most to us, at least to some degree. But it is the quitters that truly fail, and those who continue to try to thrive. Be someone who thrives. Do not give up just because things seem difficult. Instead, consider your options. Think about the ways that you can be more true to yourself and focus more of your energy on the tasks that mean the most. All of us, at some point, need support and a new perspective to help us get over the hurdle here or there. Never feel bad about yourself for needing to reach out and seek resources that will help you to get back on your feet. Life can be hard, but we're made of tough stuff. The human spirit is resilient, and our minds are strong. You do have what it takes to rise from the ashes and succeed. You can pull yourself up from your bootstraps and become a self-made miracle. All you have to do is take the first step. Once you have, you are well on your way to being the person you have always dreamed you would become. You can do it.